You've counted every calorie, tried every diet, spent hours in the gym, and still something's missing. You want more than just weight loss. You want your energy back. You want your confidence restored. You want a way of living that doesn't feel like punishment. Welcome to Master Your Metabolism, where we cut through the noise, ditch the fads, and give you a real plan to become the healthiest, strongest version of you. Hosted by our team of expert coaches with proven strategies, science-based tips, and real-life encouragement, not just to help you lose fat, but actually create that lifestyle that you love. You've tried everything. Now, let's try what actually works. This is your turning point. Let's go. Do our best. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Master Your Metabolism. I am here with all of the team. I'm here with Megan, Whitney, David, and of course, Amanda and Calvin. So we are chatting today about alcohol and how it impacts not just, your health, but your body composition and goals that you might be working towards, and how there are challenges because alcohol is kind of one of those drugs that is acceptable in society. And it's really hard sometimes in different situations to be able to kind of manage when you have a goal. So I wanted to start with Amanda because she really does have some insight into like alcohol and what it really kind of impacts with people and how their mindset is with alcohol.
Yeah, so I think this is actually a really important topic. It was something that was really hard for me. My personal progression as I was losing weight was I first cut out all alcohol except for hard liquor. And then about 4 years later, I cut out alcohol completely. Not saying that's what you need to do, but I found for myself that I wasn't making the same progress I would have been making if I hadn't removed it from my activities. From a mindset perspective, we have to look at eating and drinking as they go together. So they're going to feed off of each other. They are both mind altering substances. Food is a mind altering substance. We've talked on previous podcasts about the dissociation that comes from the binging and the emotional eating and the comfort eating and all of that. That is a mind altering substance. We don't think of it that way because food is always disguised behind nutrition. And then when we think about drinking, because it's societally acceptable and it's something that is not only legal, it's something that's been around for a long time, it's something that's very comfortable for people, and it goes along with food. Usually, when you're trying to kick one of those habits, you kind of have to kick them both at the same time, or they're going to work against each other. Um, and when it comes to alcohol, so alcohol, like I said, is a mind altering substance. It lowers your inhibitions and it reduces your anxiety. It also causes mood improvement. So that's the reason that I personally think people have the hardest time taking it out when they're trying to get on a weight loss or a health journey. It's one thing to take away someone's, pasta or pizza, but you go to take away that like drink after a hard day and they're like, no, I'm not willing to give it up. So if the emotion is that strong for the food or the alcohol, we're looking at a deeper root here because at the end of the day, both food and alcohol should be something that you take or leave. It shouldn't have that intense emotional reaction. And I think from, lowering our inhibitions, it obviously has an effect on our frontal lobe, our decision making. It's what makes us feel good. It leads to a lot of alcohol and social inclusion are highly correlated. I know that that's something David's going to be talking about. And one of the things that's the hardest for people is that social component is I'm going out to eat or drink or both with friends and they're drinking, they're eating, so I want to do the same. And this is going to lead to something called conformity bias. So this is the tendency for people to align themselves with those around them rather than using their own personal judgment. So, long story short, there was a psychological experiment done years and years ago. It was the Ash social experiment, where they would take 30 people and take one person, put them outside. Then they would draw three lines of different sizes. Okay. We can all admit right now that the highlighter is the shortest one, right? Well, what they told those 30 people who were in the room to say is that this unsharpened pencil here is the shortest one. It's not, but everybody in the room is going to say it is. 75% of people that had been taken out of the room and then brought back into the room that agreed that the longest one was the shortest one because everybody else said that it was. It is a very powerful, and this is a very old psychological experiment. It's a very, very powerful thing, this idea of social conformity. And I think that's probably one of the biggest factors, at least with my clients, when it comes to alcohol. And I think the final factor is, and I think this is probably something Brooke and Megan are going to talk about, probably Calvin as well, is it is inherently a toxin for the body, right? So we are putting something detrimental to our health into our body at a time when we're trying to improve our health. Those things don't really go together. And I think that it's almost like if you go back to the 50s and everybody was smoking a cigarette, right? So everyone's smoking. My dad was telling me a story the other day about when he cracked his head open as a small child, and the doctor stitching up his head was smoking a cigarette while he was stitching up his head. Um,
It's
and
impressive.
from that, like, you're like, why would you? People now don't even like look at cigarettes the same way. They're not even seen socially. If you ask anybody Gen Z or below, they're going to say, ew, cigarettes are disgusting. I think alcohol is going to become something like that, where we're like, why did we put this in our body in the first place? And I think the answers come from the fact that it's mood altering, which obviously we all like things that are mood altering. They help us disassociate from what we're going through. And then the social piece. So I think that when it comes to a health and wellness journey, it's really important for people to remember that it's not just about the food. There's lots of things that affect your journey, your sleep, your hydration, your digestion. I mean, it's just one of many components. And it's also, if you only address one thing, like the food, you'll probably get some results, but you're not going to get as far as you would if you took control of all of those things. And I think alcohol is one of those that's really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I know it's definitely something that it hits all aspects, that it can go out when you're social. It goes out when you are doing business. And I know David travels a lot and going through business, and he goes to a lot of business meetings. And it is seeing people that are constantly drinking, constantly doing, like, I'm not saying you can't ever go and have a cocktail, you can't ever go and do anything, but it's really, a difference between, like Amanda said, that I can go out and have a glass of wine, and that's fine. I could take it or leave it. It's not something I have to have or I'm doing because everybody else is doing. I'm making the choice for myself. And I think that's where the difference is. If I'm on, prep and doing something, I can make the choice that I'm like not going to do it. But being in different situations, I know is challenging for people for that social conformity piece. David, I know you were kind of sharing a little bit about what was going on at work.
Sure. So in my line of work, which is sales, alcohol is seen as a social lubricant. And at sales conferences, to Amanda's point about anxiety and lowering inhibitions, small talk happens at sales conferences. And it's a lot of small talk and it can be exhausting. And if people have a drink in their hand, or they're pounding beers, which I saw last week, it allows them, or it makes them feel like they can have small talk when they don't necessarily want to have the small talk or don't necessarily know how to have the small talk. One of the things that I do is, because there's social conformity, I'll have a soda water in a like a low ball glass with a lime. People might think it's like Tito's and soda. And from a social anxiety perspective, and a quote unquote conformity or fitting in or whatever you want to call it, that's a trick that I use that helps me. It doesn't mean that I'm not having a drink here or there, but it allows me to feel like I can have the small talk. It allows me, it's almost like a placebo effect, and allows me to have that conversation, that small talk that I don't necessarily want to have, but I have to have as part of my job. And it helps. But what's interesting is, at these sales conferences, people just kind of get out of hand with social lubrication, so to speak. And it's almost like they can't they almost can't help themselves. It's like you watch them go beer after beer or bourbon after bourbon, and the next day they'll come up to me like, I should have done that. You were so smart to go back to your hotel room. I'm like, it's not my first rodeo here. Um, I know what I'm doing. And what's interesting, back to your goals, etc. At this conference last week, one of my clients is like, how do I get arms like you? I'm like, don't drink 15 beers. Plain and simple. I mean, it's really not rocket science. I'm not pounding 15 beers in the course of 5 hours, but it's really, I said to him, what are your goals? What do you get out of drinking 15 beers? He's like, I don't know. And it's just interesting to try to think about the psychology of what people are doing and using the alcohol for. Um, and I try to model the behavior as best I can. But it's so interesting that irrespective of industry, you go to a sales conference, that's what happens. And so, if you're in that industry and you struggle with those things, try to do a soda water with a lime. Have a drink if you want, nurse it, get a water. That's what I do. And I don't want to, people get out of control because of the amount of alcohol they're having. And then they regret the next day either what they said or what they did. I'm not sure of what they said or what they did, but I'm very happy to remind them the next day of some conversations and maybe try to model a little better behavior for them, or not better behavior, but maybe better choices. Um, so it's fascinating in human behavior, what alcohol can do at a sales conference. But it also happens at family reunions, wherever you're anxious, or a school, your high school reunion, or whatever it is. Any of those social settings where you might have some anxiety, like Amanda talked about, it helps lower your anxiety and inhibitions, sometimes a little too much. I remember at my 30th high school reunion, yes, I'm dating myself here. My 30th high school reunion, this woman, I think we were 5 or 10 minutes into the reunion, she slumped over in the bar and had to get sent home. A guy who I haven't seen since graduation back in '89 was like flopping all over the place. I'm like, how are you even enjoying yourself? So the point is, you're at a conference, you're at a family reunion, you're at a high school reunion. You want to enjoy yourself, you want to be present. It's hard to be present when you have that much alcohol in your body. Yes, and Randy had to get sent home. I'm not saying her last name, but she had to get sent home, and it was just not a good experience for her. So I'll pause there.
Yeah. Amanda, I saw you jumping in there.
Yeah, I think David hit the nail on the head with they don't want to be present. That's the whole point. That's why they're consuming what they're consuming. And now you can do this with any substance. Alcohol happens to be something that's legal and socially acceptable. You could say the same thing with cocaine or heroin. People would go, "Oh my God, you can't do cocaine at a sales conference." It's the same basic concept, right? We've just decided that one is slightly less offensive than the other. Um,
Correct.
and the idea behind it, and one of the things that David was talking about, um, is this varied response to alcohol. They've done a ton of studies where they have given people placebos and told them they were drinking something alcoholic that was not alcoholic, and they had the same behavioral implications, which tells us that it's not the alcohol, it's the brain. And I mean, that's kind of my shtick, right? Like it's not the food, it's the brain. Like we have to get a handle on the brain in order to resolve some of these things. But alcohol is a tool that we use as a social lubricant, but it's a tool that we use to self-regulate in social
Enough.
situations. And if you're using it, you don't have to feel the reality of how many people are around you at the sales conference, how many people you have to impress, knowing what you're talking about. All of a sudden, you have a couple beers and you're the life of the party. Well, that's great. But what are you avoiding in order to become the life of the party? Because whatever you're avoiding is probably where your work needs to go.
Truth. Truth. Absolutely. And it's so funny. Calvin and I were having this conversation. We were somewhere this weekend together and all these people were drinking. And Calvin on the way home is like, I never really noticed. Like, when people are doing that, like, do they know that that's what they sound like? It's just you see it when you're not, but when you are, again,
I wasn't being judgmental or anything.
no,
It was just something I noticed.
an observation, an observation.
But people get
Well,
messy. They
it's
get sloppy,
Right.
because alcohol is a CNS depressant, right? So it is going to slow your reaction time. It's going to impair, some of your cognitive abilities. So you might be falling off the bar stool when that's not normally something, that would happen. And then I think what people have to remember too is because it does affect the your cranial nervous system, long-term effects. You think about things as serious as like Wernicke's, right? And this is usually from an excessive long-term use of alcohol. But for just dumbing that down, think about like dementia. They can't take care of themselves, so now you're a burden to your family, if it does get to that point, because now you need caregivers. You can't stay at home by yourself. You maybe have to move into a facility. So that affects many people, then because of an addiction that you had.
For sure.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Whitney?
Well, I was just going to say, so I've been forced into early retirement from my drinking career because I was heading down that path. But it's funny hearing, what Brooke, you and Calvin were talking about, because like when you see it from that, like I've had so many of these encounters and situations where as a sober person now, I have been out and seen other people drinking and thought like, oh my gosh, like because you don't know when you're in the middle of it. You don't know that that's what you sound like. You don't know that you're getting like louder and sloppier, and you don't really know the ways that it's affecting you other than that feeling that you're chasing when you're drinking. But when you're seeing it from the other side of things, it's really eye-opening and it's kind of shocking, and I love what David said too about just how it's so used as a social lubricant in so many different situations, and having to relearn that, and that is one of the kind of tough things about making the decision to either limit or cut out your drinking is that you are going to be uncomfortable for a little bit and you're going to have that social pressure. I love using the soda water and lime in a cup, in a glass, or just carrying like a red Solo cup just to kind of avoid any awkward questions, because no matter what answer you give, someone's going to try to pressure
They'll
you
keep
into
pushing it.
drinking. Yep.
Absolutely. And nobody realizes, like, I don't think people go into it and saying, I'm just going to keep drinking, keep doing the things, right? Everybody has a reason. Like Amanda said, many times it's something that you are trying to avoid. And you don't recognize it that you are even using this tool to do so until it is brought to light and somebody says, hey, girl, like, this is what's going on, right? Or you've gotten to a point that you want to make a change, right? So I'm the same way. I don't drink anymore. I don't once in a while, I'll have a glass of wine, but Calvin will tell you, I'll have one sip and then I'll just hand it to him and I don't want it anymore. But it's just my choice. I just don't want to do it anymore. When I was in college and I did all my things and that was like, yeah, but I'm in a different point now and a different aspect now. And now it's just, again, I have more reasons to be taking care of myself. I have more reasons that I want to make sure that my body's in a good place so I can take care of myself. I can stay strong and things like
Yeah.
that.
It seems to hit you. It seems to hit you when you're able to take a break from it. And then
Yes.
you take a from an outsider looking in, you're like, my God, what was I thinking? And it's like, I mean, Whitney and Megan both just had great, you know, feedback on that. It's just like the health aspect of it. Everybody just kind of knows it, but I don't know that they really know long-term and even short-term issues from it and how bad it really is for your body. It is really what it can do for your liver, fatty liver disease. I mean, it's just, there's so many different things that come from it. And the way you are in public, it's a lot of people see that, it can, in a sense, kind of change the course of your life a little bit, because people see you act a certain way. They're going to lose a certain amount of respect. It's just how it is. They're going to lose that when they see you in that condition, because to them, they see that as a weakness in a person. It is what it is. They see that as a fault, and it lowers kind of the respect for the person a little bit. It's sad to say, But it does, especially when they're getting to the point that they're falling off a bar stool, you know? It's just like, you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna take this person seriously after this, alright." So, that can happen, but the long-term effect and then the other thing too is if you ever thought about it, I mean, if somebody drinks every week, even if it's 1 day, much less 2 days per week, and it's a social drinker that goes out, drinks are like $15 when you go out to drink, and that can add up pretty quick, and if you think about how much money is being spent in that, and then what are you sacrificing in return for it, especially if you got a family, what are you taking off the table for that, is it that important to be able to do that? Like, I'm not against drinking, for itself. It's just for me, I see it as there's a time and place for everything. But when it's a regular thing and there's not a reason, it's like, what are you celebrating? You're at home watching a movie and you're 8 beers in, It's it, and so that is a result of publicly doing it, going out because of the inhibition, but the introverted side of people that just carries in and becomes a problem, you know? So it is a lot of things that people don't realize, and it happens and so sneakingly and becomes, like you said, it's very accepted in society. So it's people don't look down on it the way that they could, but I think it just kind of becomes a monster with that. But when you're looking at like the health side of it, and even like say you're on a fitness journey, you know, this is where I would step in and say, okay, I have to watch that stuff very closely with my clients because some are going to be honest about it and some aren't, and a lot of times when I see on the consult how many drinks you have per week, if I see two, I'm like, it's probably 4 or 5. And I always assume a little bit more than what it is, because let's be real, everybody kind of lies on applications a little bit. So it just doesn't look quite as bad, but it just makes me watch a little bit. So I know when there's an issue and dropping weight and I'm seeing something going on, I have to consider that. And that's a hard question to ask sometimes because people do kind of get offended when you have to say, hey, how many drinks are you having in a week? So we're looking at so many different things that cause the unexpected weight gain from it. It's not just the calories. When you look at macros, you got four calories per gram for carbs, you got 4 for protein, you got 9 for fats. Alcohol is 7. So it is more calories, in comparison to carbs and proteins, but that's really not what's doing it. If you're having a couple drinks in a night, okay, well, you can budget that in. But I think people think about that and they're like, well, I budgeted this in. What they're not thinking about is when they're having these drinks that the body recognizes this as a poison in their
Yes.
body. As soon as they get it in, as soon as it goes down their throat, their body has become toxic. So the body's shutting down and processing foods and switching over to the alcohol. And it's urgently trying to burn through this alcohol. So any food that you have, and let's be honest, people eat their worst food when they're drinking, right? Because you're wanting a burger and fries and you're like, you know what? I don't get out very often. Let's just do it all night, and those calories, those high calorie dense foods are not getting processed properly and going to end up in the adipose tissue. A lot more likely to do that from the alcohol during, when you're out drinking. And then to make matters worse, when you go to sleep at night, now you still have that poison in your body. So your body's working hard to try to burn through it, and you're not going into REM sleep until that alcohol has been processed. So it's twofold. It's not just the food. Now you're losing sleep. And this is why when people go out and have a couple drinks or a few drinks or 10 drinks, they have a tendency to sleep in later. It's very hard to get out of bed in the morning. That's because they didn't hit REM sleep until about an hour before they had to get up. So essentially, they just slept for an hour. So now cortisol comes up. So cortisol can come up for 2 days after only a couple drinks, believe it or not. And this gets worse with menopause. If you're in menopause, seriously consider dropping drinking because it 10x's on this, so you're going to look at what it does to a person in their 20s, 30s, and now what happens in menopause. But so the cortisol, in addition to that, now is releasing glucose. So this in turn turns into insulin resistance over time. So if anybody's ever noticed somebody drinks a lot of beers, this is their thing. They go home, they have beers. A lot of times the look that you're going to see, and this is male or female, you're going to see skinny arms, skinny legs, and a pot belly,
Almost like a
right?
barrel. You look like a barrel.
Right. So that is typical insulin resistance look. What I usually see from somebody that's a big drinker. And that not only is aesthetically not pleasing, but it goes much deeper than that. Because when you're at that point, your health is compromised very bad, very bad. So there's some serious things going on inside your body that's causing more health issues, and we all know that sugars support cancer. So you got nonstop sugars coming in with alcohol, on an empty stomach, supporting insulin resistance, blood sugars are going up. So it's a cascade of things that are happening, over time. So, when I have an athlete going in that wants to go into prep, this drinking needs to be pulled out. Even if it's just occasionally, it has to be pulled out because that is going to set you back. It's one step forward, two steps back when this happens. And it's going to affect your training. Your recovery is not as good. So in most cases, if you work out that day and you go and have drinks at night, that workout's a wash. It's a wash. If you get any progress at all from it, it's going to be very, very minimal because you do not have the recovery to support it. This can actually lead to overtraining now, which increases cortisol and causes you to be tired more often and not sleep as well. So it's just a cascade of things. So again, I'm not against drinking, and I'll have a drink every once in a while, but I just got to know when it's okay to have it and when it's not, and just try to keep it in a moderation, in a place, of that.
And I
So
think it's really hard for people because, like you mentioned, in menopause, like we don't have the same resilience for stress. You have very low capacity for nonsense, right? So basically, our first effort to control that is give me a glass of wine. I can't even deal with this right now. That's how we've always done it. That's what we did. Our kids were little. That's what we were doing. Let's just sit on the couch and finally chill and relax with a glass of wine. But the problem is, even you don't have to have 10, 12, but you have a glass of wine every night. When you are in menopause, you no longer have the same detoxification process. Your liver is working overdrive just because of what is going on with your hormones. So add alcohol on top of that. It's just like Calvin said, a cascade. And your cortisol is already spiked by nature because of the hormones being downregulated. So for me, that was something of I saw it. And I tell my women that are in menopause, try it for a week, girl. Like pull out that alcohol for a week, see how your body responds. And generally, you will see a huge shift and they'll start dropping weight like crazy just by taking that out.
I think,
So,
sorry, Brooke.
no, go ahead.
I think the thing that we don't think about is something that Calvin mentioned, but I want to emphasize it is that alcohol is a toxin. So anybody who was a big partier in college, like myself, knows what happens when you have too much to drink. Eventually, your body says, we're capped. We can't do this anymore. And it's going to come back out of you. There's a reason for that. If your body was happy with it having it in you, you would just go to sleep and be all happy. But that's not what happens. I've found that out many times myself the hard way. But we have to remember if this is a toxin and we are putting a toxic substance into our bodies, how are we then going to expect not only for our body to behave normally, but if you're on a weight loss journey or a health journey, you're looking for exceptional level of functioning here because you're not just trying to maintain, you're trying to burn, you're trying to change things. And by having, you know, we want to go out, we want to enjoy, sure. Could we potentially replace that with some other type of behavior? So, a lot of people have been having a lot of success with these adaptogen drinks. A lot of people with the THC and CBD drinks. You get a little bit mellow, but it's not the same intensity because it doesn't have the alcohol in it. And the thing that Calvin told me that got me to really clean up my act because I needed to if I wanted to reach the goals that I did wind up reaching was your metabolism isn't functioning when you're drinking. When you have alcohol in your system, you are not burning fat. And that extends after the time that you're drinking. It extends fully into the following hours and days. So you may be thinking, oh, this is just a Friday night, but it's affecting your Saturday morning. It's affecting your Saturday midday and afternoon. That workout you get Saturday morning, probably not that effective, but we like to think that if we do it, then we should be getting the full result from it. But the body doesn't work that way. So I think this is one of those general things that in any health and wellness weight loss journey, people need to understand is how does the body work? How do certain things affect the body? we know anecdotally that some things are good or bad for us, but most of the time we don't really care, right? Like we know that that fried chicken sandwich isn't the best choice, but it's delicious and available, so I'm going to have it. What does that do? When Calvin starts talking about insulin resistance, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want that." But how do you get that? All of these behaviors that we do all the time and things that we're eating and consuming all the time. So it's really more of an understanding of the first part of why we do it psychologically. That's going to help you break the habit. But what I really emphasize with people is what is going on physiologically. Because if you're putting all this effort during the week into your programming and then on the weekends, you're drinking a lot, which is affecting, and then Calvin's 100% right. That frontal lobe, diminished frontal lobe activity is going to lead to some risky eating behaviors, i.e., 3 a.m. McDonald's drive-through. It's just,
Or Taco
and we,
Bell.
or Taco Bell. We don't expect your brain to tell you, oh, this isn't on your plan when you're drunk at 3 a.m. You're going to eat whatever you want. So why would you put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, it's true. And those adaptogen drinks, lifesaver. I tell people you can get them on Amazon. There's a brand called Recess that I really like. Just make sure you get the ones that are not those what are they called? Nootropics that like make your brain think. That won't help you go to sleep. That will help your brain keep thinking. But there are ones that was your sister, Whitney. So there are ones that help you to calm. They have things like ashwagandha, L-theanine. Those are all great. And especially even women in menopause, they are adaptogens that help your body adapt to stress. So drinking them, you will actually feel that same type of from a glass of wine that it will keep you calm. You put it in a wine glass so that way you have this replacement behavior. So you're doing something that you normally would have been sitting with a glass of wine, and instead, Amanda the Yoda, you can be sitting with your adaptogen drink. And that's how I started. That's how I started kind of weaning down. And now that's what I do at nighttime. That's what I have as I'm winding down. It helps you to kind of relax, reset. And another thing that Calvin was mentioning about alcohol, and besides all of the things when you're on a weight loss journey, but it's usually just you log into MyFitnessPal like a vodka. It's just going to be calories, but no macros. Like your body's not just blowing through 100 calories there. Like count it as a 5-ounce potato. When we have our clients log their food, it is okay, every 1 ounce of alcohol, one glass of wine, one beer, one White Claw, whatever you're having is going to be a 5-ounce potato. And look how quickly that adds up. Like, I'm sorry, but I would rather eat
Eat a
my
potato.
potato than wind up drinking it for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Hang on,
and you
this is
also
oh, go
have
ahead.
to think of it too is like, even though you're logging that 5-ounce potato, say you're in a reverse, this isn't like a hack because you're not using the calories, the sugars, the carbs like you would be if you eat the potato. Like that's going to actually fuel your body and help you make progress and feed those dang muscles. The alcohol's not doing you any favors. Um, and it's funny because like I've had that talk with our sister a couple of times trying to explain like, you're logging it this way, but you have to understand that like it's not just extra sugars or extra carbs. Like this is working against your body and it's really having a negative impact. There's no positives that are coming out of consuming all those extra calories. So I wanted to add that too because
Unless you did something really epic when you were drinking, which can happen from time to time, but it's rare.
Helpful, Calvin.
But yeah, but just to kind of expand on the macro thing a little bit and why we do it as a potato, the 5-ounce potato equals 1 ounce of alcohol. I think it was 1 ounce. And then basically the same as like a light beer, and so it's our glass of wine, a 4-ounce glass of wine. That's the equivalent in calories. So the reason why we pull from carbs is because alcohol has its own macro. So it's technically not even carbs. You can drink tequila. It's not carbs. It's a hallucinogenic. So, but it still has the calories, So the reason why we pull from carbs with this is because you don't want to pull those calories from protein. That's essential. You need that to live. You don't want to pull those calories from fats. Those are essential. You need them to live. Carbs, guess what? That's your variable. You can live without those. A
They'll be
happy
very
life, but you can you can live. So we pull it from carbs.
sad.
So that's the main reason why we do that, but it's kinda like what she had said, if you're in a cutting phase and you're losing 25 grams of carbs for every, ounce of alcohol that you have, you find out really quick it's not really worth it when your calories are low and you find out, "Well, I guess I'm not eating tonight."
Yeah.
Have protein, everybody's favorite when they're drinking, so, you
Chicken.
And
know,
grilled fish.
I think I'm yeah, chicken.
And
Put some
alcohol on an empty stomach is a no-go. So if you're choosing your alcohol over your food, that's also a bad choice.
Yes, and gut issues alongside with that, we didn't even touch on that, but for gut protocols, if somebody is trying to fix SIBO, H. pylori, any of these things, and you have I would say 1 drink, but even 2 drinks, you will set that protocol back 2 weeks. That's how much damage it causes to your stomach. And that just 2 drinks, and for most people, that's if they're a seasoned drinker, that's not even a buzz, but it has that much impact on it. So you can think of what this actually is doing to your gut if it's on a regular basis. There's so many things.
Yeah,
For
when we
sure.
think about how it affects the gut too, more into that, even thinking from like the medical standpoint, it's going to increase risks of bleeding in the gut because it's just attacking that lining, gastritis, nausea, vomiting. Again, that's why we expel it because it is a foreign thing that's attacking our body, malabsorption then of our macros. So we're not using that food the same as we would. Some other systems that it affects too, like from a heart perspective, it's going to decrease your blood pressure, but elevate your heart rate. So you're not getting, the best recovery either from a workout maybe you had earlier in the day or like you said, going into the next day, you can't get the best workout the following day because your body is just it's fighting against that alcohol. Respiratory from a lung perspective, it's going to suppress your respiratory rate. So think about someone who is overweight already and maybe just starting their journey. Maybe they've got obstructive sleep apnea because they have that extra weight and now you have alcohol and you're suppressing the rate even more. So then there's an issue you got to watch as well. The diabetes, like your blood sugars, we already kind of talked about that. It's going to cause those to go haywire. Dehydration,
Mm,
you're going to have to increase your water. If you have that drink, have a glass of water after it or while you're drinking that drink. I would even have an extra. So if I have 1 drink, I'm going to have 2 glasses of water for that 1 drink because it is going to cause dehydration. Some
yes.
other things, muscle wasting kind of goes again with you're not absorbing the nutrients. So over a long period of time, you're wasting your muscle over time. And then we think about ourselves when we get to that 70s, 80s. I want to be able to carry my groceries. I want to be able to live on my own. And if I have a drink once every day for years and years and years, probably not going to be able to do that, or it's going to be, a lot harder. And then back to the recovery piece too, just our immune system. It
Yes.
suppresses that as well. So we're more apt to get sick. Even the smallest little cold could set you back, you know, days when we all want to make progress. So
And lots of people with autoimmune disorders, they don't realize your immune function, when you have an autoimmune flare up, it is, you have to take care of the gut when you have any type of autoimmune, PCOS, lupus, Lyme, whatever you have, it is source. The first thing that we have learned that you have to care for is the gut. And alcohol is going to tear it up, and that's their immune system. So if you are trying to repair a system that is so essential for someone that has an autoimmune, so the lining of your gut will open up, food that you're having, anything that you're having will go into the bloodstream. That is that immune response. So it's really important to kind of really keep that lining healthy and safe. So that way you don't have as many of those autoimmune triggers that you will see and those responses that people, when you get a flare up in these autoimmunes, like it's no joke. These
Yeah, it's
people
no
suffer.
joke. It isn't. I know anytime anybody comes on that has an autoimmune, if I even see that they have a couple drinks in a week, first thing I'm doing is I'm asking for labs because I need to see how bad it is because it will cause inflammation like crazy. And it's
Photos.
already difficult, especially with, yeah, Hashimoto's, PCOS. When you have these, you have to really try to avoid things that cause inflammation. And that can be gluten, that can be dairy, it's hard enough to avoid those, but then you add alcohol to the mix, you're gonna gain weight, you're going to be inflamed. You're going to feel crappy. You're not going to have energy. It's all these things. And is it worth it for that? Is it really worth it to go through that?
Go ahead, Amanda.
So I feel like we've shared like a ton of really good information about alcohol, but I don't want people to think that we're saying if you drink, you're a terrible person and you're never going to lose weight, because we're not saying that. And I know personally, when my clients find out that I gave up drinking entirely, they're like, oh my God, how did you do that? Like, that's impossible. No way. So, this is what I tell my clients, because my clients know I am never looking for you to go from 100 back to 0 in one shot. I'm looking for a gradual step down. So I tell one of them is one of the things that Megan said, which is after every alcoholic beverage, you have 8 ounces of water. If you want to make it 16, extra points to you. I tell people that they want to eat their last meal 2 hours before they start drinking. Why? Because it helps start the digestive process of that before you introduce the alcohol. Sequentially, stop drinking 3 hours before bed. You want to make sure there's some distance between your alcohol and your sleep, because we talked about how that's impactful. And when it comes to your choice to drink or not drink, it doesn't have to be that black or white. Can be your choice to drink more or drink less. So what I tell my people is to be intentional with your drink. If you're going to drink, make sure you really want that drink. If you're just kind of meh about it, or you're doing it because you're with a bunch of other people, but you don't really care if you drink or don't, it's not worth that 5-ounce potato. And I
Correct.
will tell you personally, that is what got me to give up alcohol, because I really like potato. But it really comes down to the fact that you have to learn to moderate a little bit. If you cut cold turkey, you're just going to get angry. And that's not, if it's something you really are invested in and you cut cold turkey, there's a very tiny percentage of the population that can stop doing an addictive behavior, cold turkey, and be successful with it. It is not the norm. The norm is most people try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. Well, what I'm saying is, why don't you try to just intentionally consume your alcohol? Use it where and when you want, but pull back. Instead of having 5 drinks a night, pull back to 4, and then to 3, and then to 2. It takes longer, but you're more likely to keep it sustainable
Successful.
than if you just say, okay, I'm not drinking anymore.
Yep, for sure. We've had a few clients like that were starting. I had someone that was starting at 15, and we brought him down. Hey, boy, like, let's just try for 10 week 1. He did great. He had evidence that he could do it. Next week, he brought it down to 6. Next week, by himself, he brought it down to 3. And then now he's just like every once in a while. And now he does it. Same thing, has intention, knows the purpose, knows why he's doing what he's
And
doing.
he's
And it,
dropping weight like crazy.
yeah,
He's
been
dropping like
really,
crazy
really,
right now.
and now he can see the results of it, and it just reinforces the changes that he made.
And he did it. He did it. That's the thing, is when Brooke, I love that you just talked about the evidence, because that's the key piece. If you do baby steps, you're getting proof that if you put a small amount of effort in, you're going to get a result. So that gives you the confidence to keep going. And that's an important factor with any sort of behavioral change.
For sure. For sure. Awesome. I think this was a lot of great information, and thank you, Amanda, for wrapping that up at the end and kind of sharing some tips and tricks. I think that would be really helpful for people. So thank you
Lots of
guys.
water the next day, lots of water and electrolytes the next day, all that stuff to recuperate. Because I'm saying that because I know we got a lot of people mad at us right now. So I'm just trying to make friends with you again and help you out. Lots of electrolytes. That's the key.
Well, I usually ask for a review, but maybe not for this one. No, I'm just kidding. If you guys did find this useful, we'd appreciate a review. And if you have any other topics, please drop them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you guys.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Master Your Metabolism. If you found value in today's episode, it would mean the world to us if you'd hit subscribe and share this episode with someone who could use a little guidance in their health journey. Ready to take the next step? Head over to www www.mastersfitnesscoaching.com, and you can book a free call right from the site so we can chat about your goals and how we can help support you. Don't forget to join our Facebook group where we're sharing coaching tips, support, and tricks to help keep you on track and continue making progress. You don't have to do this alone. We're here to walk with you every step of the way. Until next time, stay consistent, stay kind to yourself, and keep mastering your metabolism. Let's do this together.